Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of the Unstuck Club. We are a little late to be here by a couple of days, but I've been Shaer and Di. It's been quite a journey for us to get here. We literally had to postpone because we were stuck.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the way you and I work and the way we teach is, we never just take stuff from books and go, do this because this is what the book says. We actually have to go through it. And I mean, yeah, let's face it, the last 10 days have been a doozy of a week for both of us. And it fascinates both of us how parallel our lives run and the things that come up in slightly different ways. But yeah, we had to get unstuck from making this podcast perfect. We had to let go of that, like this is the day it needs to go out, because that's the way the world is at the moment. Like you have to adapt, you have to go with the flow. And both of us sat the other day when we were due to record it and looked at each other and just said, like, this, neither of us were feeling it. And if there's one thing we both are, Jo, and the way we show up, it's authentically.
It's so true. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the ability for the two of us to guide each other when we're not certain. Because I understand my personality so well, I know that I can promise and then really feel like I need to stick to the promise. And I was like, because I was literally unwell. I had gotten myself into such an interesting space of, hearing myself tell that I literally felt sick. It was sitting in my chest. I was like, I can still do this, Di. And I'm going to have to you and say to you, you were the one who was like, does not need to be recorded today, which was a beautiful thing for me I needed to get unstuck from this promising to delivering no matter what, even if I don't feel 100% up to it. So I have to say thank you for that, because I can get a little bit stuck in that sometimes. I promised to show up, so I will show up even if I'm dragging myself emotionally or physically there.
But I think that's, I think a lot of people who listen to this will be nodding their heads, because it's what we do. We show up when we really shouldn't, when we actually are not able and not capable. And I was the same. I have for a very long time, I think, just been fooling myself that I've got my shit together and, I've got this. And Thursday night, a couple of weeks ago, I fell apart and I was like, I don't have it all together. And the way my thoughts were going was really concerning to me. And I know I've seen it with the clients that are coming through my door lately, is our mental health is under serious strain. But you're going to tell us this is the energy of the 8th year. And I think we did go in like, oh, this is the 8th year. Woohoo, it's the year of the achiever and it's the manifestor and it's all those wonderful things. But as we know, this planet is polarity. So yes, you have that, but you have the shadow side. And my feeling is our shadows are coming up massively to be healed. And I have to say for myself that even though I think I've been at my lowest point over the last few days, and I'm a lot better now, I never felt that I was in this victim space. Part of me knew I had to go through this for my growth as a teacher, as a healer, collaborating with you in this work that we're doing. I had to go through this. And I think the biggest lesson I got was feel it, that you have to feel to heal. But Joe, maybe you can just remind people of the energy of this year, that it is not all sweetness and light and go, 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 and you can have it all.
It's interesting because I haven't blogged in ages, and I can't remember who I was talking to, and I was like, you know what? I have to repeat the energy of the 8. So I've actually just written a blog about it, which I'm thrilled about. And it's really like, has 2024 just caught you so off guard because it's so much tougher than you thought it was going to be, because it's been so much tougher than I thought it was going to be. And I'm an 8 life path number, so for me, to strive and achieve, it's supposed to be what thrills me, right? So when we look at the energy of the 8, it is all the traits that you would tap into in order to achieve what you want to achieve. It's about where you step into your power and you feel your empowerment, and it's where your courage is and your bravery is, and that real confidence to speak up and own who you are and how you guide your way through life and how you stand up as a leader, because we all have places in our we have the capacity to step into our power. So we all have the ability to lead and drive what's important to us, whether you're a parent or whether you are in a relationship, because both of you should be leading in some way, partnership in business, an entrepreneur, part of a team. We all need to lead. And then what happens in each person's numerology, your trait will distinguish how you lead. And your trait will distinguish how you are. Your trait will distinguish how you confidently navigate what you want and how you strive for all of these things that the achiever strives for. But what happens, and it's the polarity you're talking about, guys, is that in order for us to really step into how empowered we are, we need to get into a place where we feel what disempowered, right? And in order to, it's not a tick box. And even if, because I can honestly say I do brave things, right? And kind of like my people around me, they're always like, oh, being a nomad is so brave. The way you live your life is so brave, and being an entrepreneur is so brave. And I kind of stepped into 2024 going, I'm so brave.
Yeah.
And it's energetically in my background. I'm so confident to have it. But then what happens with this 8 year for each is it's to see different things. Like, I've realized that I've believed that because of my bravery, I need to navigate everything on my own. So a different level of bravery for me has been vulnerability, to tell some of my closest people struggles that I'm having, because I usually just navigate it and do it all on my own. And that's what this year is bringing up of us is, what does it need for you to realize that you can step into your power and that you can hold your power? So that means every single one of us in some way is going to navigate the feeling of disempowerment.
Yeah. And I think I really want to just say to people, like, showing vulnerability is not weakness. I had a client this morning who, her body is just like, it's about to implode. And I said to her, what is stopping you letting go? I mean, I was almost crying the tears that she wouldn't let herself. And she said she hadn't cried for a year. And I said, what is stopping you letting go? And she said, I'm afraid I'll be seen as weak. She's in corporate, she's a woman. when did we decide that vulnerability is weakness? You have to admit how you are feeling. And I think once you do that and you reach out to the right people, I think that's the other thing. Because, everyone has their own stuff. They don't necessarily want to sit down with you and hear you, going over what you're experiencing. And often, people go, oh, well, that's not a problem. Like, take this supplement or, see this person. They're not listening and they're not receiving what you're saying. So you have to find the right people to support you. But it is not weakness to finally admit, I am not coping. I'm falling apart. I'm afraid of my thoughts. I need help.
Yeah. And what's been beautiful about you and me is that we have both reached out to professionals, like in the capacity of what we need, we both reached out to professionals.
Yeah.
Which is something that I know I spoke about in one of the earlier podcasts, it's so important to layer, because doing the body work with you, I've gone back into my own coaching and had a look again at, what is activating this emotional distress, what's navigating that process, and leaning into a professional, which also has a stigma sometimes, that I should be coping. And I think also for people to not box themselves and go, because I've chosen the spiritual path, I can't do the traditional path.
Yeah.
So I've chosen to do the body work and tap into the numerology and the astrology, and that feels like a whole package to people. But I'm so grateful that you and I have the capacity to also tap into people who are experts in their field, who have nothing to do with what's happening with me as an 8 life path number, or the fact that we've just gone into Aries season, which is also all bravery again, anything that's got to do with that Mars energy. And we can only hold so much of that before we've got to be vulnerable and say, actually, I need a different level of help,
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. Was I'm seeing a psychologist, and I will continue to see her until I feel like, okay, I have an understanding of why certain things happen. And I think that's the other important thing to remember, Joe, is this body is so complex. And what we do is, oh, I'm feeling down, rush off to the doctor, get a tablet, bang the antidepressants. I'm not knocking antidepressants, because I think everything has its place. Take the antidepressants, because sometimes, as we know, you can feel so low that there is no light at the end of the tunnel. It's just really dark. The first thing I did was went back onto my 5-HTP, which has been a wonderful supplement for me. It works for me. It's a natural supplement. But you have to look. I think we're at a point on this planet. You have to look at what your body is feeling, what it's holding, what you're ignoring. It still fascinates me how much of our own well-being we put on the back burner for our job, for other people, for our families, our relationships, whatever it is. We ignore the one thing, which is the only thing that can carry us through life, is this body.
So now we both talk about the session that we had, which is so beautiful. So in the session that I had this morning, she was saying to me, that there is a lot of chaos when your closest friends are surprised when you finally do have the confidence and the courage to say this is the space that I am in, and I admit my truth, which was so fascinating for me because I mean, I've let you know some stuff, and you're like, I didn't know that was going on behind the scenes. And bless my business partner Greg, he lives in the UK. We catch up, when we can, because of the incredible contract he has on the other continent. And he was catching up on me as a nomad, and saw Facebook posts, and I was with such a dear friend who happened to be on the same continent for a little bit of time, and phoned me to say, "Oh, you looked so happy," and I burst out crying. I was crying, and it was like, and the total surprise on his face really became apparent that I just was not leaning in enough and being truthful enough, and that's such an important thing. Like my baby sister is very dear. I say baby, like 46 or something, but she'll always be my baby sister, and I let her know, and I was like, I'm really not in a good space, carrying this all by myself. And my stuff is, I really think I can solve my own problems on my own. That is my stuff. And what happens is your mind is your mind, and no matter what, it is controlled by the different voices in our heads that are trying to guide us and protect us from ever getting hurt. So sometimes what you think is the most, or what I think is the most logical solution, is actually coming from a wound, a place like a real wound. And my little sister was the one who was like, I'm going to find the right person for you to talk to, who's going to get you and help you. And I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been here if I hadn't had just been. And I don't know if it's brave enough, or if it's actually you just exhaust yourself to such a point that you just can't carry your own shit on your own anymore. That's kind of where I got to, I think.
I think it's a combination, but I do think is you just reach rock bottom. I know I was so depleted on every level, and I think that that's when your walls come down. When you are that exhausted that you can no longer hold those walls up. I mean, that's what burnout is. That's what, nervous breakdowns are. It's just too much to try and carry and juggle and pretend and plaster a smile on your face, because this is the world that we live in. And, people, when I said to my client, you need to make time to be with your body, to see how it's feeling and what it needs, because we don't, we will have our phones on 24/7, and our kids will be, plonked in front of devices to keep them occupied, because we just don't have the capacity. And I'm hearing that phrase more and more. I don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like it's that hamster treadmill that is spinning faster and faster, and it's starting to throw people off. And some of them, it throws them right out of the ballpark, and they don't come back. Others are fortunate enough to get a massive wake-up call that they can possibly come back from. But there are also many who are not surviving being thrown off, and that's the reality. And I think that's why you and I had to go through this, because we have to know what it feels like to feel that desperate, that bleak, that hopeless, that useless. And I'm not over dramatizing this for the sake of this podcast. It is exactly how I felt. I could not function a week ago. I could do nothing except cry. I don't think I cried that much when John died, in fact. And I just was like, I don't see a way forward. And now this week, after doing a lot of work, resting, saying no, making time for me, already I can feel, and it is that inner shift. It's so important. You can't do this stuff up here. You've got to feel it in here, and you have to feel that shift.
Yeah.
And this
And
morning when I was dressing, and this laughter bubbled up out of nowhere. I laughed at myself in the mirror, and it was like a bubble of happiness. And this little voice said, stop taking it all so seriously.
yeah, that's for sure. That is so fun. It's amazing. I also had a moment this morning. I was out yesterday because in South Africa it was a public holiday, and I love the variety of my life as a nomad. So I was with a whole new crowd of people yesterday, and they're older, and I'm not knocking older people, but they do not know that they didn't know the full depth of what it means to have a YouTube subscription. So what I did was I showed them, just choose one song, and there's three little dots that will say start radio, and from that song it creates like a music plays for the rest of the day, like linked to that genre. So all of these beautiful songs that we hadn't listened to in ages were coming up, and it totally shifted it just totally shifted my energy yesterday morning. When I woke up, I got myself out of my routine, because I have a routined music when I exercise. I did the same thing, and I started with Dancing Queen from ABBA, and it just went on this whole disco era of music. And at the end of my bio blog on my website, it says, when I'm happy, I dance. When I'm distressed, I dance. And we also, the getting unstuck, shifting the energy doesn't always have to be the talk to the therapist, best the stuff. It can actually just be on Instagram. I follow some of the sweetest accounts. I follow these two unruly beagles. Unruly. The comments, people are going, train your dogs, and I'm like, it's the cutest thing. It's such an important message. You've really got such an important message across. Like, we take it way too serious. Way too serious.
And music is one of the quickest ways to know, music, when someone is dying, hearing is the last sense to go. And there was a beautiful film, I think it's called Alive Inside. And this guy in America, into the old age homes, introduced these recorders, and he put together playlists. It was for the dementia and the Alzheimer's patients. And he put together a playlist of the music of their youth. And then they'd put the headphones on, and these patients would listen. And listening to the music of their youth, they became lucid. They could have conversations with their loved ones. Their memory came back while they were listening to this music. Like, it triggered the memories of their youth. And I've found, like, well, when you stayed here, I mean, I always have my music on. But yes, to dance, to play the music that uplifts you, investigate new music. It's so important to do these little things to pull you out of that darkness and what can easily become habit. There are simple, free ways. Not everything means you have to go to a therapist. Yes, like we knew we needed bigger help, but there are things that I can do. I can keep my house clean. Nothing gives me greater joy than pottering around my house, playing with the dogs, watching the dogs. It's finding those little simple things that bring you back to this moment, like that be here now that my psychologist has been saying to me all week. Get out of your head, be here now, be in the present, go outside, feel the grass, stand on the grass, ground yourself, and we go, oh yeah, I must do that. And then we'll have all the other bad habits, but we struggle to create the good habits. You're very good with your habits, Joe. You are one of the most consistent people that I know. You're very good at maintaining your well-being.
Thank you, Dar. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I am going to extend on that and say one of the triggers of me realizing that I need help and support is that I watch my anxiety spike when I don't have the capacity to always stay in. So I want to say it nicely. So this is what I've realized. I've realized that we, for a long time, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the weight loss because of how it triggered me, right? So I needed to learn healthy habits in order to lose the weight, and I love my fitness and I love my exercise and I love all of that because it created what caused the change in who I am, which is such a positive change. And at some point, there's a tipping point where that habit, that new habit that you created, can actually be the next level of anxiety. And that's what's happened with me, is that the healthy habits. I'll tell a little bit. In July, I'm going to the Netherlands, and I'm going to be for a week on a yacht. I'm saying it's a yacht, but it's a boat. But I'm saying it's a yacht. With a couple of friends for a whole week for a very, very, very special friend's birthday, and everyone's like, "Where are we stopping? And what point of Croatia are we starting?" And then he wanted like some eating stuff, and he said, "Joe, I'm going to say that you're vegan," and everyone's asking these light questions, and I'm like, "Is there a gym on the yacht?" Because take away my weights. I mean, when I did this house sit, it's the normal questions are: is there an alarm system that I need to worry about? And I was like, do you have weights? And if she had said she didn't have weights, I was already thinking in my head, how would it cost me more to bring my weights down? Or would I just go to the local, like a Mr. Price, but sport or whatever, and buy weights, which is now you as a friend and what I actually didn't know was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the good habit, which I'm so grateful for, sometimes can become that tipping point where it actually becomes that new level of anxiety. So now I'm back to a whole new journey of, the woman that I'm speaking to, she's like, what's your routine like now with exercise? So I'm like, I'm close to the beach, so I walk every day for an hour on the beach, and then I come back and I'm doing half an hour weights. And she's like, no, that's you don't have to do both on the same on the day. The hour walk, then you'll do the weights, and it's not the same for everyone. But it's that beautiful statement that you said about me that actually has caused the chaos. I am grateful that I'm disciplined, and I know that I have it, but I have to learn a new discipline now, which is actually to relax on the discipline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, do you know what? I think though as well, those, look, I do get that it can, it can become excessive. But I think also those kinds of things, they do bring you a sense of security in what is a pretty topsy-turvy world at the moment. Like the things that we used to know and trust as being our safety and security, all of that is really wobbly. So I think maybe, I'm not saying it is for everybody, but possibly it's also those kind of routines and habits make you feel safe, and they become like, I have to do this, otherwise I don't feel secure. So,
I'm,
I
do you know
and,
what I'm starting? Because we stop learning as the guides and the coaches and the that we are to other people. As you know, we're also always evolving, and one of the things that I'm really starting to understand about the way that the ego works is that ego is always programming and always holding on to new stuff. Like we focus a lot on the childhood stuff and what happened when you were a child and what happened when you were a teenager and how was I had a beautiful session with a friend of mine who I was also honest with, and she took me back to a certain time, and I must be 7 years old. But actually the ego is even programming stuff happened, not so long ago, months ago, and that wound that was created, or an incident that triggered me in 2017, and I was like I was in my 40s. I was traveling, and we did an excursion, like we went out, and I was really unfit. So everyone else was having a beautiful experience and actually a terrible time because my really overweight, unfit body struggled to appreciate the experience. My ego has held onto that so very tightly, and it was like mid-40s stuff, and I've got this thing: whenever you travel, you will be fit and you will be able to have that experience, without realizing that it's actually now programmed as if I was that little girl once again, and I put it in the bits, and it's called chaos.
How do you break that? How do you stop that kicking in when you then go into a similar situation?
So it is because I understand the makeup of my traits. So I understand in the blueprint of who we are, which comes from our astrological birth chart, right? We have a place which is our lessons from the past. So I went straight into my lessons from the past, and then I know what's there. And opposite the lessons of the past is the call for bravery. And in my call for bravery, I have the architect, which is very, very structured. So it's aligned to the Capricorn energy. It's very, very structured. So I learned to overcome what was happening by getting structured, and then my structure became too much. So it's actually once again returned to my lesson of the past, and now I have to restructure something else. So it's I don't care how you do it, and you're going to agree with me on this. We don't care how you do it. Start to understand yourself. Start to, because that's where the solution is. The solution is in starting to be able to distinguish. This is the truth of who I am, and this is the healthiest way for me to step into the truth.
You see, again, it goes back to that foundation of getting unstuck is to face the truth.
Absolutely.
Actually say to yourself, whether you verbalize it to someone else, or you're driving in your car, or you're standing in your kitchen or in the shower, the moment you say to yourself, this isn't working for me, you've made that first shift, that first step to getting unstuck. But you have to admit, and yes, it can be terrifying to admit that depending on the circumstances and what might need to happen, but you are not going to get unstuck unless you face the truth of what's going on right now in your life. I think on that note, I think we can, there's a lot more that we can talk about. We'll keep that for the next podcast. But we really want to leave you with that. You have to, the foundation of getting unstuck is you have to face the truth of where you are, what's going on, what's not working, what you want to change or let go of.
And you don't have to do it on your own. Tell someone. Just tell someone. I think that for me that is what has saved me over these last couple of days, as raw and vulnerable as it was, and I made myself be sick, physically sick, like chest. It was in my chest. But I did it, and it just felt like it took a world off my shoulders.
Yeah. And thank you, Jo, for being there for me and being the ear and checking in on me. I really appreciate it.
And I think we just both want to say, if there is anyone out there who feels they don't have anyone to talk to, we are here. There is always someone to talk to. Right.
Absolutely. Okay.
We say goodbye.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.